It is 62 degrees inside my kitchen. I can see my own breath misting in the air every time I exhale, but I am too terrified to touch the thermostat. Outside, the Cleveland winter is burying my driveway in heavy snow. But the real cold is right here in my hands. I am standing in the dark, holding two pieces of paper that tell the story of how I ruined my life. In my left hand, there is a glossy, colorful brochure for a luxury villa in Boca Raton, Florida. It shows a silver-haired couple laughing on a white sandy beach, holding glasses of champagne. In my right hand, there is a letter stamped in aggressive red ink. It says final demand, notice of intent to lien. They are not just asking for money anymore. They are threatening to take this house, my real house, the one where my wife, Linda, is currently sleeping upstairs under 3 heavy blankets because her husband is a failure who cannot afford to heat the home. I have been standing here for an hour, staring at a third document lying on the kitchen table. It is my term life insurance policy. The payout is $250,000. I have done the math, Sam. I have actually done the math. If I have a heart attack tonight, the insurance pays out. If I die, the debt goes away. Linda can pay off the sharks. She can turn the heat back on. She can go to the grocery store without crying in the parking lot. I am a retired high school principal. I spent 40 years teaching children how to be responsible, how to think critically, and how to build a secure future. I was a pillar of this community. And yet, at 68 years old, I let my pride blind me. I wanted to be the rich man on the beach. Instead, I am the old man freezing in the dark, wondering if my wife would be better off if I simply stopped breathing. I spent 40 years building a retirement, Sam, and I signed it all away in one afternoon.
Welcome back to the show. You have just heard the voice of a man named Robert. He is a man who spent 4 decades of his life serving his community as a high school principal. He is a man who followed every rule. He paid his taxes. He paid off his mortgage. He saved money in his retirement accounts every single month for 40 years. He did everything right. And yet, as you heard, he is currently standing in a freezing kitchen in Cleveland, Ohio, contemplating the darkest exit imaginable. He is weighing the value of his own life against a stack of overdue bills. He is wondering if his wife would be financially safer if he were no longer here. That is a terrifying place to be. It is a place of absolute desolation. And the tragedy is that Robert did not get there because he was reckless. He did not get there because he gambled his savings away at a casino or because he bought sports cars he could not afford. No, Robert is in that kitchen because he tried to buy a dream. He is there because he wanted to leave a legacy for his grandchildren. He is there because he fell into a trap that was designed by teams of psychologists and data scientists to exploit the specific insecurities of the American middle class. We often talk about debt on this show as a hole that you dig for yourself. We talk about overspending on credit cards or taking out loans for things we do not need. We usually frame it as a lack of discipline. But today, we are telling a different story. Today, we are talking about a predatory industry that masquerades as the ultimate reward for a life of hard work. This industry does not sell you a product. It sells you a fantasy. It sells you the image of yourself as a wealthy, successful patriarch or matriarch relaxing on a beach with your loved ones. It sells you the idea that you have finally made it. But the mathematics underneath that fantasy are brutal. The mathematics are designed to bleed you dry. Let us look at the numbers that are haunting Robert right now. He and his wife, Linda, have drained over $100,000 from their hard-earned retirement fund. That is $100,000 that was supposed to pay for their medications, their heating bills, and their peace of mind. It is gone. It has evaporated into the coffers of a massive corporation. And what do they have to show for it? Do they own a piece of real estate that they can sell to recoup their losses? Do they have an asset that has appreciated in value over time? No. They have a contract. They have a piece of paper that obligates them to pay $3,000 a year in maintenance fees for a property they have not visited in 4 years. When Robert tried to sell this so-called asset on the open market, he listed it for $1 single dollar. Think about that. He paid $100,000 for it, and now he cannot find a single human being on earth willing to take it for $1. That is not an investment. That is a financial cancer. It is a liability that masquerades as an asset. And the most terrifying part is the perpetuity clause. This contract is not just for his lifetime. If he does not navigate this correctly, this debt could attempt to attach itself to his estate. It is a debt designed to outlive him. This is why he is looking at his life insurance policy. He feels like he has been checkmated by a corporation that views him not as a customer, but as a yield source. I want you to listen very closely to today's episode because Robert and Linda are not stupid people. I need you to understand that. Robert ran a school. Linda was a head nurse who managed life and death situations daily. These are intelligent, responsible, educated people. If this could happen to them, it could happen to anyone. It could happen to your parents. It could happen to your grandparents. It could happen to you. We are going to dissect the anatomy of the high-pressure sales pitch. We are going to walk you through the windowless room where they lock you in for 6 hours. We are going to analyze the emotional manipulation tactics they use to break down your defenses. They weaponize your love for your family. They ask you questions like, do you not want your grandchildren to have good memories? They make you feel cheap for saying no. They make you feel small so that you will spend money to feel big again. And then, once you are trapped, we are going to look at the secondary industry of vultures that circle the victims. Robert mentioned an exit scam. That is a whole other layer of this nightmare. When you are desperate, when you are bleeding, you become a target for people who promise to save you. They promise legal miracles for an upfront fee, and then they vanish into thin air, leaving you in a deeper hole than before. This episode is going to be heavy. We are going to confront the shame that Robert feels. We are going to talk about the silence that keeps victims isolated. Robert and Linda have been hiding this from their friends at the country club. They have been hiding it from their children. They are eating instant noodles in the dark to keep up the appearance of being successful retirees. That silence is what allows these predatory companies to operate. If we do not talk about it, if we do not shine a light on the mechanics of this trap, they will continue to destroy families. So, I am asking you to listen with empathy today. Put yourself in that kitchen in Cleveland. Feel the cold air, feel the weight of the paper in your hands, and realize that the line between financial security and total ruin is often much thinner than we think. It can be crossed with a single signature on a sunny afternoon in Florida. If you are listening to this and you feel a knot in your stomach because you are trapped in a contract you cannot escape, or if you are hiding a financial secret from your spouse because you are too ashamed to speak the truth, I want you to know that you are not alone. There is a way out. It might be messy, and it might be painful. But there is a path to freedom. If you need help, if you need to share your story, or if you need to see the specific steps we recommend for getting out of these traps, please email us at the address in the show notes. We read every single email. And please subscribe to the channel. Not for the algorithm, but because the information we are sharing today could save a life. It could save your retirement. It could save your legacy. Now, let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to the moment before the snow, before the debt, and before the despair. Let us go back to who Robert and Linda were before they walked into that presentation room. Before we peel back the layers of Robert and Linda's story, I need to address the thought that is likely forming in the back of your mind right now. I know it is there because I see it in the comments section of every single video we produce about financial fraud. You are listening to this, and a part of you is thinking, how could a high school principal be so foolish? You are telling yourself that you would never sign a contract without reading the fine print. You are telling yourself that you would have walked out of that sales presentation the moment they asked for money. You are comforting yourself with the belief that intelligence is a shield against predation. But I am here to tell you that you are wrong. Intelligence is not a shield. In fact, in the world of high-pressure sales psychology, intelligence can sometimes be a liability because smart people are often the most confident in their ability to negotiate, and that confidence is exactly what these sharks use to bait the hook. We need to perform a forensic audit on what Robert actually bought because the terminology is designed to deceive you. When you buy a home, you are purchasing an asset. You are buying the land, the wood, the concrete, and the potential for appreciation. Over 30 years, if you pay your mortgage, you end up with a house that is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You build equity. That is real estate. What Robert bought is not real estate. It is a legal fiction wrapped in the language of property ownership. The industry uses terms like deed, title, and mortgage to trigger the part of your brain that associates these words with safety and investment. But let us look at the math without the emotion. Robert paid over $100,000. In the real world, $100,000 is a down payment on a substantial home, or it is a fully funded college education, or it is a portfolio of stocks that pays you dividends. In the timeshare world, that $100,000 is simply an entrance fee. It is the cover charge to get into the club. It buys you absolutely nothing tangible. It does not buy you the land under the resort. It does not buy you the furniture in the room. It does not even guarantee you a specific week on the calendar unless you pay extra for that privilege. Now, let us talk about the true killer. The silent assassin in this contract is not the purchase price. It is the maintenance fee. This is the variable that turns a bad purchase into a financial catastrophe. When Robert signed that contract, the maintenance fee was around $1,000 a year. That sounds reasonable for a week of vacation, does it not? But here's the trick. That fee is not fixed. It is not regulated like a residential rent control. The developers control the board of directors, and they can raise that fee by any percentage they want for any reason they fabricate. They can claim they need a new roof, a new pool, or new landscaping, and they pass 100% of that cost on to you. And because you signed a contract with a perpetuity clause, you cannot say no. You cannot shop around for a cheaper management company. You are a captive consumer. Robert is currently paying $3,000 a year. Let us project that forward. In 10 years, with inflation and aggressive management, that fee could easily be $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Over the next 20 years, Robert and Linda will pay another $100,000 in fees alone just to keep the account open. And unlike a hotel room, where you pay only when you stay, Robert must pay this $3,000 every single January. Whether he is sitting on the beach in Florida or sitting in a freezing kitchen in Ohio, he is paying rent on a unit that remains empty. He is subsidizing the developer's overhead. If he stops paying, they do not just cancel his reservation. They sue him. They go after his credit score. They place a lien on his primary residence. This is why I say he did not buy a vacation home. He bought a mortgage on a hotel room that he does not own, and he bought it forever. I want you to understand the concept of the perpetuity clause, because it is the most terrifying legal construct in the consumer market. Most contracts have an end date. Your car lease ends in 3 years. Your phone contract ends in 2 years. Even a 30-year mortgage eventually hits zero. But a deeded timeshare is often written to last forever. It is designed to be inheritable. This means that when Robert passes away, this debt does not necessarily vanish. The resort will attempt to pass the obligation on to his children. They will send a bill to his estate. They will try to guilt his daughter or his son into taking over the ownership, framing it as a gift, when in reality it is a transfer of liability. Imagine leaving your children a debt that grows every year. Imagine your legacy being a lawsuit. This is the trap Robert is in. He realizes now that the asset value is zero. Actually, it is less than zero. If you own a stock that drops to zero, you lose your investment, but the bleeding stops. You do not have to pay the stock market $3,000 a year to keep holding the worthless stock. But with a timeshare, the bleeding never stops until you legally severed the limb. When Robert listed his property for $1, he was signaling to the market that this ownership has a negative value. He was willing to lose 100% of his capital just to stop the annual invoices. And the fact that nobody bought it for $1 tells you everything you need to know about the supply and demand. There are millions of these units floating in the ether, owned by desperate retirees who are realizing too late that they are the cash cows for $1 billion industry. So, when we listen to Robert's story, I need you to suspend your judgment. I need you to stop thinking about what you would have done. Instead, I want you to focus on the psychological dismantling of a man. Robert did not wake up one morning and decide to burn his retirement. He was led there, step by step, through a carefully choreographed sequence of events designed to exhaust him, confuse him, and ultimately break him. It started with something innocent. It started with a desire to be a good grandfather. It started with a vision of family unity. The predators know that we will do almost anything for the people we love, and they weaponize that love against us. They took a man who was proud of his financial stability and they turned his greatest strength, his desire to provide, into his greatest weakness. To understand how a smart man signs a $45,000 contract in a state of delirium, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to look at the man before the snowstorm. We have to look at the man before the debt. Who were Robert and Linda before the brochure landed in their mailbox? Who were they before the ink was dry? Let us step into their world before the trap snapped shut.
You have to understand who we were before the chaos started, Sam. If you had met me 5 years ago, you would not have seen a man who hides in his kitchen with the lights off. You would have seen Robert, the high school principal who walked the hallways with his head held high. For 35 years, I was the first car in the parking lot at 6 in the morning and the last one to leave after the football games on Friday nights. I was the man people came to when they had problems. Parents came to me when their children were failing. Teachers came to me when they needed guidance. I was a fixer. I was a pillar of stability in a chaotic world. My wife, Linda, was exactly the same. She was a head nurse in the intensive care unit at Cleveland Clinic. She spent her days managing life support machines and comforting grieving families. We were not gamblers. We were not people who took risks. We were the people who cleaned up the messes that other people made. We lived our lives by a very strict code of discipline. We never bought a new car. We always bought used sedans that were 3 years old because I had read somewhere that it was the smartest financial decision. We never carried a balance on our credit cards. If we could not pay for it in cash, we simply did not buy it. I remember the day we paid off our mortgage on this house. It was 10 years early. We opened a bottle of sparkling apple cider because neither of us really drank alcohol, and we sat on the living room floor and burned the loan documents in the fireplace. I remember watching the paper turn to ash and feeling this overwhelming sense of safety. We owned the roof over our heads. No bank could ever take it from us. That was the promise we made to each other. We had reached the finish line. When we finally retired, the numbers looked perfect on paper. Between my state pension and Linda's pension, we had a guaranteed income of $4,200 coming in every single month. That covered all our bills with money left over. And then there was the nest egg. We had saved dollar by dollar into our 401k plans until we had exactly $250,000 in cash assets. To us, $250,000 felt like an infinite amount of money. It was $250,000. We thought we were wealthy. We thought we were invincible. We had done everything the financial gurus told us to do. But there is a dangerous psychology that kicks in when you retire, Sam. It is something nobody warns you about. For 40 years, your value is defined by your job. I was the principal. Linda was the head nurse. And then one Tuesday, you turn in your keys, you eat a slice of sheet cake in the break room, and you walk out the door. The next morning, you wake up and you are nobody. The phone does not ring. The emails stop coming. The silence in the house is deafening. We sat in this living room for the first 6 months of retirement, and we just looked at each other. We were bored. We felt like we were fading away. We started to feel like we deserved a reward for all those years of sacrifice. We told ourselves that we had suffered through the Cleveland winters for long enough. We deserved the sun. We deserved to be the kind of grandparents who could take the whole family on a luxury vacation. We wanted to be the heroes of the family again. We wanted our children to look at us and see success, not just two old people sitting in rocking chairs. We started talking about Florida. It became an obsession. We would watch the Travel Channel and see those beautiful shots of palm trees and blue water, and we would look out our window at the gray slush on the driveway, and the contrast was painful. We wanted a piece of that paradise, but we were still frugal. We were not going to go out and buy $1 million beach house. That would be irresponsible. We wanted something smart. We wanted something that felt like an investment. We convinced ourselves that we were too smart to be scammed. After all, I had a master's degree in education. Linda knew how to triage a trauma patient. We thought we could spot a liar from a mile away. That arrogance was our downfall. We thought our intelligence protected us, but the people who design these traps do not care about your intelligence. They care about your emotional hunger. They knew exactly what we were craving. We were craving relevance. We were craving status. We were craving a legacy. We wanted to leave something behind for our grandchildren, something better than just a pile of old furniture. We wanted to give them memories. We wanted to be the grandparents who owned a villa. It happened on a humid Saturday in July. We went to the Ohio State Fair just to get out of the house. We were walking past the prize hogs and the funnel cake stands, and we saw a booth. It was not flashy. It looked professional. It had a banner that showed a beautiful resort in Orlando right next to Disney World. There was a young man in a polo shirt standing there, smiling. He looked like one of my former students. Clean-cut, polite, trustworthy. He handed us a brochure and asked a simple question. He said, "Do you folks like to travel?" It was such an innocent question. We stopped. We started talking. He told us that they were promoting a new resort and that they were looking for select couples to come down and tour the property. He said the words that hooked us. He said, "This is not for everyone. This is for people who want to build a legacy for their families." He handed us a voucher. He said if we just attended a 90-minute presentation to give them our feedback, they would give us a $100 gift card and 3 nights at a local hotel for free. We looked at each other. We saw a free vacation. We saw a smart deal. We saw a way to see Florida without spending our own money. We thought we were winning. We thought we were taking advantage of him. We took the voucher. We shook his hand. And in that moment, standing there with the smell of popcorn and livestock in the air, we initiated the sequence of events that would destroy everything we had built. We just wanted a place to take the grandkids. We just wanted to feel special for a few days. Then we saw the booth at the state fair, and we walked right into the cage. We arrived in Orlando on a Thursday afternoon, and at first, it felt exactly like the brochure promised. The resort was massive, with fountains that shot water 50 feet into the air and palm trees that looked like they had been manicured by artists. We checked into the hotel they had provided, which was decent, but it was not the villas they were selling. The sales rep who met us in the lobby was named Jason. He had a smile that seemed a little too bright, and he was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He told us the presentation would be the next morning at 8 o'clock sharp. He said, and I remember this clearly, he said, "Robert, Linda, just give us 90 minutes to show you the future of travel, and then you can take your $100 gift card and go enjoy the parks." It sounded so fair. It sounded like a simple exchange of time for money. We woke up early, dressed nicely because we wanted to show them we were serious people, and walked over to the sales center. The moment we stepped through those double doors, the atmosphere changed. It was not a relaxation center. It was a boiler room. The music was pumping at a volume that made it hard to think. It was this high-energy, upbeat pop music that thumped in your chest. The room was freezing cold. I mean, refrigerator cold. There were hundreds of small round tables packed together, and every table had a couple like us sitting at it, looking slightly confused. There were no windows. You could not tell if it was day or night outside. They sat us down at a table in the back, and Jason sat across from us. For the first hour, it was pleasant. He asked us about our grandchildren. He asked us about our favorite memories. He asked us where we would go if money was no object. I see now that he was not making conversation. He was mining for ammunition. He was writing down every name, every dream, and every insecurity we mentioned on a legal pad. When the 90-minute mark hit, I looked at my watch. I tapped the face of it and smiled politely at Jason. I said, "Well, Jason, this has been very informative, but our time is up, and we would like to collect our gift card now." His smile dropped. It did not disappear slowly, it vanished instantly. He looked at me like I had just insulted his mother. He said, "Robert, we haven't not even shown you the pricing yet. How can you make a financial decision without seeing the numbers?" I told him we were not interested in buying today. I told him we just came for the information. That is when the tag team started. Jason signaled to a man standing on a raised platform, a man they called the director. This man walked over, and he was big, imposing, and loud. He sat down without asking. He leaned in close to Linda, invading her personal space. He started drawing circles on a piece of paper. He wrote down the number $45,000. He said, normally this package is $90,000, but because you are here today, purely by luck, we have a developer inventory unit that we can let go for half price. But you have to sign right now. If you walk out that door, the price doubles. I tried to do the math in my head. $45,000 was a lot of money, but they made it sound like an asset. They showed us charts saying the value of travel goes up every year. They showed us photos of the villas, but I held my ground. I said no. 2 hours passed, then 3. We had been in that room for 4 hours. We had not eaten since breakfast. My wife, Linda, is diabetic. She needs to eat on a schedule. I saw her hands starting to tremble slightly under the table. I asked Jason if we could get some lunch or at least a snack. He said, absolutely, Robert. We have a buffet right after we finish the paperwork. It will only take 10 more minutes. But it was never 10 minutes. Every time we said no, they brought over a new person. They brought over a quality assurance manager. They brought over a member services Vunfong. They just kept switching faces, keeping the energy high while we were getting more and more exhausted. My brain started to feel foggy. The loud music was relentless. I could not hear myself think. I just wanted the noise to stop. I looked at Linda, and she looked gray. She looked small. That is when Jason dropped the hammer. He looked at the paper where he had written our grandchildren's names. He pointed to it with his expensive pen and said, Robert, you told me you wanted to be a hero to these kids. You told me you worked hard for 40 years. If you walk away over $45,000, which is basically the price of a Toyota, what are you telling them? Are you telling them they are not worth it? Maybe a legacy is not important to you? Maybe you are the kind of grandparents who want your family to vacation at a Motel 6 by the highway while your friends are staying here. If that is who you are, then fine, go. It was a punch to the gut. It was designed to trigger my pride, and it worked. I felt humiliated. I felt cheap. I looked at Linda, and I saw the tears welling up in her eyes. She whispered to me, Robert, please, let us just do it. Let us just get out of here. I was not thinking about the interest rates. I was not thinking about the maintenance fees. I was thinking about saving face. I was thinking about getting my wife some food. I was thinking that if I signed this paper, the interrogation would end, the music would stop, and we could leave this freezing cold room. I took the pen. My hand was shaking, not from excitement, but from low blood sugar and adrenaline. I signed my name. I signed Linda's name. We signed a contract for $45,000, plus interest, plus fees. We did not sign it because we wanted the timeshare. We signed it because we were hostages. We signed it to buy our freedom. As soon as the ink was wet, the whole room erupted in applause. They popped a bottle of cheap champagne. They took our picture. But inside, I did not feel like I had won anything. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I felt like I had just lost something precious, but I was too tired to know what it was. We walked out of there with a folder full of papers we had not read and a debt we did not understand. We had spent 6 hours in a box, and we had paid $45,000 just to get the door code to leave the room. You have to understand that for the first 12 months, we truly believed we had made the smartest decision of our lives. The buyer's remorse that we felt in the car ride home, that sick feeling in our stomachs about the $45,000, it all evaporated the moment we swiped our key cards for our first official vacation. They call it the honeymoon phase for a reason. When we arrived in Boca Raton that February, the air was warm and smelled like jasmine and salt water. It was such a sharp contrast to the gray slush we had left behind in Ohio. We walked into the lobby, and this time, the staff did not treat us like prospects they were trying to hunt. They treated us like royalty. The concierge looked up our names in the computer and smiled. He said, "Welcome home, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Welcome home." That phrase did something to us. It bypassed our logic and went straight to our hearts. We were not just guests renting a room. We were owners returning to our estate. They gave us a unit on the top floor. It was the presidential suite. I remember walking in and seeing the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The light was pouring in, turning the whole room gold. There was a fruit basket on the granite island in the kitchen with a handwritten note thanking us for our loyalty. The sheets on the king-size bed were Egyptian cotton, crisp and cool. I walked out onto the balcony and looked down at the pool complex, and I saw people fighting for lounge chairs. But up here, in our private sanctuary, it was silent. It was exclusive. Robert came up behind me and put his arm around my waist. I could feel the tension leaving his shoulders for the first time in years. He whispered to me, "We did good, Linda. We really did good." In that moment, the debt did not matter. The maintenance fees did not matter. We were living the life that we had seen in magazines for 40 years but never thought we could touch. We spent that week living in a bubble of dopamine. We ordered room service. We sat by the pool in the owner's only section. We drank cocktails with little umbrellas in them. We felt wealthy, and that feeling is addictive. It is more addictive than any drug because it validates your entire existence. It tells you that you are a success. When we got back to Cleveland, we were glowing. We were tan, rested, and armed with 1,000 photographs on my iPad. This is where the status trap really snapped shut. We went to dinner at the country club with our friends, Bill and Suzanne. Now, Bill was a banker, and they always had a little bit more money than we did. There was always this subtle hierarchy where we were the public servants and they were the financial elite. But that night, we were the ones holding court. I pulled out the iPad and started scrolling through the photos of the villa. I showed them the marble bathroom with the jacuzzi tub. I showed them the view from the balcony. I saw the look in Susan's eyes. It was envy, pure, unadulterated envy. She asked me, "Linda, how much is this costing you per night?" And I got to say the words I had practiced. I said, "Oh, we do not pay per night, Susan. We own it. We can go whenever we want." That lie tasted so sweet. It was not technically a lie, because we believed it, but it was a distortion of the truth. We did not own the unit, we owned a contract. But in that dining room, with the clinking of silverware and the low hum of conversation, we felt like we had finally leveled up. We were not just the nurse and the principal anymore. We were property investors with a portfolio in Florida. That identity became our armor. It protected us from the fear of aging. It protected us from the irrelevance of retirement. Every time we paid the monthly bill for the loan, we justified it by looking at those photos. We told ourselves that we were paying for our status. We were paying for the look on Susan's face. We were paying for the right to say, "We are going down to the villa this winter." But here is the insidious part of the trap, Sam. The room they gave us that first year, that presidential suite with the ocean view and the fruit basket, that was not the room we had bought. That was what they call the hook room. It is a marketing tool. They put new owners in the best possible unit to solidify the sale and prevent them from rescinding the contract during the cooling off period. We did not know that. We thought that was our standard. We thought that was what we would get every single year. So, fast forward to the next January, the snow was falling in Cleveland, and we were desperate for that hit of sunshine again. I picked up the phone to call member services. I was excited. I had my calendar open. I dialed the number, and I waited on hold for 45 minutes. When the representative finally answered, her voice was flat. It was mechanical. I told her we wanted to book our week for the second week of February, just like last year. I expected her to say, "Certainly, Mrs. Thompson. Welcome home." Instead, she typed something on her keyboard. I could hear the clicking. Then she said, "I am sorry, but there is no availability for February at your resort." I was confused. I said, "What do you mean? We own the week." She said, "No, ma'am, you own a floating week in the silver tier. You have to book 12 months in advance to secure high season dates, and even then, it is subject to inventory." I felt a cold flush go up my neck. I said, "Well, what about March?" She clicked again. Unavailable. April. Unavailable. She said the earliest opening they had was a Tuesday through Thursday in late August. August in Florida is hurricane season. It is 100 degrees with 90% humidity. Nobody goes to Florida in August unless they have to. I tried to argue. I said, "But last year we got the ocean view in February." She let out a small, condescending sigh. She said, "Last year was a promotional stay. Ma'am, that was a courtesy upgrade. If you want guaranteed access to peak season dates, you would need to upgrade to our platinum tier. And just like that, the illusion shattered. The golden light faded. I looked at Robert across the kitchen table. He was smiling, waiting for me to give him the dates. I had to lower the phone and tell him that the paradise we thought we owned was closed to us. We had paid $45,000 for a key that did not open the door. We were not owners. We were just revenue streams. And the only way to get back into the dream was to pay them even more money. That was the moment the dopamine wore off and the withdrawal set in. We realized we were not holding a golden ticket. We were holding a bill for a show we were not allowed to see. I need you to understand the mindset of a man who is drowning. When you are underwater and you are running out of air, you do not think clearly. You do not analyze the chemical composition of the water. You just thrash toward anything that looks like the surface. After Linda hung up the phone with member services that day, after she told me that our $45,000 investment was essentially worthless because we could never actually use it, I felt a rage building inside me that I had never felt before. I felt swindled. I felt like someone had reached into my pocket and stolen 2 years of my salary. I told Linda to get her coat. I said, "We are going down there, not to vacation, but to fight." We drove to the local sales office in Cleveland, which was located in a glass office building downtown. I was ready for a confrontation. I had my contract in my hand. I had a list of grievances. I was prepared to demand a full refund, or I was going to threaten legal action. I walked in there with the energy of a principal who just caught a student vandalizing the gym. I wanted answers. I wanted justice. But the industry anticipates this reaction. They know exactly when the anger phase hits, and they have a specific script designed to neutralize it and turn it into another sale. They call it the reload. We were not met by the aggressive sales guys in cheap suits this time. We were ushered into a private office with plush leather chairs and a view of the city skyline. A man named Michael came in. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and a calm, reassuring voice. He did not argue with us. He did not tell us we were wrong. He listened. He poured us coffee. He nodded his head as I ranted about the blackout dates and the rude customer service and the lies we were told in Orlando. When I finally ran out of breath, he looked at me with genuine sympathy and said, "Robert, I owe you an apology. The sales team in Florida did you a disservice. They sold you a starter package, but they let you believe it was an ownership package. They sold you a silver tier membership, which is designed for young families who can travel on short notice in the off-season. It was never designed for a retired couple of your stature who need guaranteed weeks in February." He validated my anger. He made me feel like he was on my side. He said, "You are trying to drive a golf cart on the highway, and you are angry that it cannot keep up with the traffic. It is not your fault. It is the vehicle." Then he laid the trap. He said, "Look, Robert, you have already invested $45,000. That is a significant amount of capital. If you walk away now, or if you try to fight this in court, you will lose that money. The contract is ironclad. You will be left with nothing but a bad memory. But there is a solution." He pulled out a new binder. He said, "We can convert your silver points into platinum equity. This is what you should have been offered from the beginning. Platinum members do not compete for inventory. Platinum members have a deeded priority window. If you upgrade today, we can retroactively apply your initial $45,000 as a down payment. You will not lose a dime of your original investment. You will simply be moving your money from a bad vehicle to a good one." He showed us the numbers. The cost to upgrade was an additional $55,000. I sat there and stared at the number, $55,000. That was more than my first house cost. But my brain was doing mental gymnastics to justify it. I was trapped in the sunk cost fallacy. I thought to myself, if I do not spend this money, the first $45,000 is gone forever. It is waste. But if I do spend this money, I save the initial investment. I turn a failure into a victory. I turn an unusable timeshare into a luxury legacy for my grandchildren." Michael leaned in and whispered, "Robert, think about Linda. Does she deserve to fight for reservations every year? Or does she deserve to have the red carpet rolled out for her? He knew exactly where to stick the knife. He knew I was trying to protect her. He knew I was trying to prove that I had not made a mistake. I asked for a moment to discuss it with my wife. Michael left the room. Linda and I looked at each other. We were scared. We knew that we did not have $55,000 sitting in our checking account. The only place that money existed was in our retirement fund, the 401k that I had spent 40 years building. It was our safety net. It was the money for long-term care. It was the money for emergencies. To touch it was taboo. But the fear of losing the initial $45,000 was stronger than the fear of the future. We convinced ourselves that this was a one-time fix. We convinced ourselves that once we were platinum, the value of the asset would skyrocket, and we could always sell it later for a profit. We were doubling down on a losing hand because we were too proud to fold. I made the call to my brokerage firm right there in the office. I remember my hand shaking as I held the phone. The broker on the other end warned me. He said, "Mr. Thompson, if you liquidate this amount, you will trigger a taxable event. You will have to pay income tax on the withdrawal. You are depleting your principal. Are you sure you want to do this?" I felt annoyed by his questions. I felt like he was treating me like a child. I said, "Yes, I am sure this is for a real estate investment." I used that word, investment. I authorized the wire transfer, $55,000, gone in seconds. Combined with the tax penalties that would come later, we had just burned through over $65,000 of our liquidity in one afternoon. When Michael came back in and saw the confirmation number, he smiled. He shook my hand firmly. He said, "Congratulations, Robert. You have made a wise decision. You have secured your family's legacy." We walked out of that office with a heavy, gold-embossed box containing our new platinum credentials. We should have felt relieved. We should have felt happy. But as we walked to the car, the adrenaline faded and a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. I looked at the city skyline, and the world looked slightly darker. I had just raided my own future to pay for a vacation I was not even on. I had taken the money that was supposed to keep us safe when we were 80, and I had handed it over to a corporation that had already lied to me once. But I pushed that thought down. I buried it. I told myself I was a shrewd investor. I told myself I had fixed the problem. I did not know yet that I had not fixed anything. I had just unlocked the next level of the nightmare. We thought we were investing. We were actually setting fire to our safety net, and we were standing there warming our hands over the flames, pretending it was sunshine. You have to understand that the collapse did not happen all at once like a bomb going off. It was slow. It was a creeping suffocation that took place over the course of 3 years. When we upgraded to platinum, we told ourselves that the $55,000 was a one-time capital expense like buying a car. We thought that once that money was paid, we would just slide back into our normal lives with our pensions covering the monthly bills. But we forgot about the inflation. We forgot that the world does not care about your fixed income. 2 years after we signed the upgrade, the price of everything started to climb. The cost of gas for the car went up. The cost of groceries went up. Our property taxes in Ohio went up, but our pensions stayed exactly the same. We were bringing in $4,200 a month, but suddenly our basic survival costs were eating up almost all of it. And then, in January, the letter arrived. It was the annual maintenance fee statement for the timeshare. When we first bought, they told us the fees would be stable. They lied. The bill that landed on our kitchen table was not for $1,200 anymore. It was for $3,000. They had raised the fees by nearly 150% in 3 years. I remember staring at that number, $3,000. That is almost an entire month of our income. That is our grocery budget for 6 months. I looked at Robert, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He did not have the swagger of the principal anymore. He looked like a man who had lost his map in the woods. But the maintenance fee was just the first punch. 2 weeks later, we got a second envelope. It was marked special assessment. I opened it with trembling hands. The letter explained that the resort in Florida, the one we had not visited in 2 years because we could not afford the flight tickets, needed a new roof on Building C and a renovation of the clubhouse to maintain the luxury standards. They were assessing every owner an additional $1,500 to cover the construction. I sat there in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and I felt like I was going to vomit. They were asking us for $4,500 in cash due within 30 days, or they would charge us late fees and restrict our access to the property. We did not have $4,500. Our savings account was empty because we had drained it for the upgrade. Our credit cards were already carrying a balance from the last time we tried to visit. We were trapped. We had a legal obligation to pay for the roof of a building in a state we were not even in, while the roof of our own house in Cleveland was 20 years old and leaking in the garage. That is when the bargaining started. That is when we started trading our dignity for solvency. As a nurse, I know the human body better than most. I know exactly what high blood pressure does to the vascular system. I know what diabetes does to the nerves if it is not managed perfectly. I spent 40 years lecturing patients about compliance. I told them, you must take your medication every day or you will lose your feet. You will lose your eyesight. And yet, there I was, standing at the bathroom sink with a pill cutter that I bought at the dollar store. I was taking my metformin, my blood pressure medication, and my statins, and I was cutting them in half. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that half a dose was better than no dose. I did the math in my head. If I split the pills, I could stretch a 30-day supply into 60 days. That would save us $40 a month in copays. I did the same thing with Robert's cholesterol medication. He watched me do it. He stood in the doorway of the bathroom, watching his wife jeopardize her health to save $40, and he did not say a word. He could not say a word. Because if we bought the full dose, we could not pay the electric bill. We were trading years off the end of our lives to pay a corporation that viewed us as nothing more than an account number. I remember the sound of the blades snapping through the chalky pills. Snap, snap, snap. It sounded like bones breaking. The winter that year was brutal. The temperature in Cleveland dropped to 0 and stayed there for weeks. In the past, we kept the house at a comfortable 68 degrees. It was warm, it was cozy, it was home. But when the gas bill arrived and it was $300, Robert walked over to the thermostat. I watched his hand hover over the dial. He looked at me and his eyes were watering. He turned it down to 65. Then, a week later, he turned it down to 62. Do you know what 62 degrees feels like when you are 66 years old? It settles into your joints. It makes your fingers stiff. You can never get warm. We started wearing our winter coats inside the house. I wore 2 pairs of wool socks and a knit hat while I was watching television. We sat under piles of blankets, shivering, seeing our breath in the air when we spoke. We were living like refugees in our own paid-off home. I remember one night, sitting on the sofa, wrapped in a quilt, looking at the framed photo of the Florida villa on the mantelpiece. In the photo, the sky was blue and the sun was shining. In our living room, it was gray and freezing. I wanted to take that photo and smash it against the wall. I hated it. I hated the palm trees. I hated the ocean. I hated the lie. The lowest point came at the grocery store. We used to buy fresh vegetables, lean meats, good cheese. We ate well, but with the collection letters piling up on the counter, we had to cut everything. We stopped buying meat. We stopped buying fresh fruit. We went to the aisle with the dried goods. We bought bulk packages of instant noodles, 10 for $1. We bought canned soup that was high in sodium, even though we knew it was poison for our blood pressure. We bought day-old bread. I remember standing in the checkout line, hoping that nobody from our old life would see us. I was the head nurse. He was the principal. We were supposed to be enjoying our golden years, and there we were, buying poverty food with coupons. That night, we made the instant noodles for dinner. We did not turn on the overhead lights in the kitchen because we were trying to save a few pennies on electricity. We ate by the light of a single candle, not because it was romantic, but because it was necessary. Robert sat across from me, slurping the salty broth, still wearing his winter coat. He looked up at me. and a single tear ran down his cheek and fell into his bowl. He did not wipe it away. He just said, "I am so sorry, Linda. I am so sorry." We were eating ramen in the dark, shivering in the cold, destroying our health. Also, we could send a check for $4,500 to a luxury resort in Florida that we could not afford to visit. We were slaves to a paradise that had become our prison. We were eating ramen in the dark so we could afford a luxury villa. We couldn't visit. That night, after I watched the tear roll down Linda's cheek and fall into her instant noodles, something inside of me finally snapped. It was the sound of my own pride breaking. I stood up from the table, leaving my bowl half full, and I walked into the small study where we kept the computer. I told myself that the bleeding had to stop. I told myself that I was going to fix this, even if it meant taking a loss. I was prepared to lose money. In my head, I calculated that we had put in about $100,000 total. I thought, rationally, that if I sold it quickly, maybe I could get $60,000 back, maybe $50,000. I would take the hit, we would pay off the credit cards, and we would walk away with our scars but with our freedom. I sat down at the desk. The room was cold because the heat was still off, so I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. I woke up the computer monitor, and the blue light flooded the dark room. It stung my tired eyes. I opened a browser and typed in the name of our resort, followed by the word resale. I expected to see a few listings. I expected to see a market. What I saw was a graveyard. There were pages and pages of listings, hundreds of them. I scrolled down the first page, and my heart started to hammer against my ribs. I saw units exactly like ours, the platinum tier, the ocean view, the deeded access, and I looked at the prices. They were not $60,000. They were not $50,000. They were listed for $5,000, $3,000. I felt a wave of nausea. I thought there must be a mistake. I thought, perhaps these are distressed properties. Perhaps these people owe back taxes. I refused to believe that my $100,000 investment had evaporated so completely. I decided to take control. I went to a popular timeshare resale website called Redweek. I paid the membership fee to list my property. I spent 2 hours crafting the perfect description. I used my best vocabulary. I wrote about the pristine beaches, the marble countertops, the legacy of family memories. I uploaded the professional photos from the resort website. I priced it at $25,000. I told myself I was undercutting the market. I told myself that a smart buyer would see this as a steal. I posted the listing and I sat back, waiting for the emails to flood in. I waited for 24 hours. I checked my inbox every 10 minutes. Nothing. Not a single inquiry. Not even a scammer. Just silence. After 3 days, I lowered the price to $15,000. I told Linda, "Honey, we just need to be competitive." Still nothing. A week later, I lowered it to $5,000. $5,000 for an asset we paid $100,000 for. I was practically begging someone to take it, and still the inbox remained empty. The silence was louder than any screaming match we could have had. It was the silence of a market that had completely collapsed. Desperation drove me to eBay. I had never used eBay for anything other than buying old books, but I saw that people were selling timeshares there. I typed in the search bar, and that is when the true horror hit me. I saw listings for $1, one single dollar, and they had 0 bids. I saw listings where the seller was offering to pay the buyer. They were offering to pay the closing costs and the first year of maintenance fees just to get someone to take the deed. I clicked on one of these listings. It was for a platinum unit just like ours. The description was heartbreaking. It said, "Please take this off my hands. Health issues. Cannot afford. Free to a good home." It read like someone trying to give away an old dog that bites. I sat there in the freezing study, and the reality crashed down on me. I realized that I did not own an asset. I owned a liability. In the real world, if you have a house that is worth 0, you can walk away. But this was worse than 0. This was negative equity. I realized that I could not even give this property to a homeless person. If I went downtown in Cleveland and found a man sleeping on a park bench and I handed him the deed and said, "Here, you own a luxury villa in Florida, he would have to say no, because he could not afford the $3,000 annual maintenance fee. The moment he signed that paper, he would be in debt. I tried to list ours for $1. I filled out the form on eBay. Starting bid, $1. Buy it now price, $1. I sat there watching the countdown clock on the auction. 7 days, 6 days, 3 days, 1 hour, 0 bids. The auction ended. Unsold. I relisted it. Unsold. I was trying to give away a $100,000 purchase for the price of a gumball, and the world was screaming no. I felt a sense of panic that I cannot describe. It was claustrophobic. I felt like the walls of the study were closing in on me. I realized that the contract was a trap designed to be inescapable. The developer had already made their money. They got my $100,000. They did not care if I sold it or not. In fact, they preferred that I did not sell it because as long as I held the deed, they could legally force me to pay the maintenance fees until the day I died. And then they would come for my estate. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. I sat in the darkness, listening to the wind howl outside the window. I felt like a fool. I felt like a failure. I had led my family into a financial bear trap. And now I was chewing off my own leg, trying to get out. But the jaws were rusted shut. I could not sell it. I could not give it away. I was chained to it. And that is when the vultures started circling. That is when the phone started ringing with people who promised they had a magic key to unlock the trap, provided I paid them just a little bit more money. They say that when you are wounded in the water, the sharks can smell the blood from a mile away. I never understood how true that was until the phone rang on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in November. I was sitting in the living room, staring at a pile of unpaid maintenance bills, feeling that familiar tightening in my chest that had become my constant companion. The caller ID showed a number I did not recognize, a Washington, D.C. area code. Normally, I would let it go to voicemail, but in my desperate state, I was answering everything. I was hoping for a miracle. I was hoping for a buyer. I picked up the phone, and a voice on the other end said, "Mr. Thompson, my name is David, and I am calling from the Timeshare Freedom Group. We are a consumer protection agency working to help victims of predatory resort contracts. We have been reviewing your file, and we believe you are eligible for a guaranteed legal exit based on the deceptive practices used during your sales presentation." My heart actually skipped a beat. I felt a rush of adrenaline. He used the word victims. He validated me. He did not treat me like a debtor. He treated me like someone who had been wronged. He knew everything about my ownership. He knew the name of the resort. He knew the date we bought. He knew about the upgrade to platinum. He told me that his firm was preparing a class action lawsuit against the developer and that they had a 100% success rate in severing these perpetuity contracts. He spoke with such authority. He used legal terms like fraudulent inducement and consumer rights violation. I listened to him for 45 minutes, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like someone was throwing me a lifeline. David explained that the process was simple. They would assign an attorney to my case. They would file a cease and desist order against the resort, which would stop the harassment and the maintenance fees immediately. Then they would negotiate a deed back, forcing the developer to take the property back and cancel the debt. He made it sound like a military operation. He said, "Robert, you have suffered enough. Let us take the fight to them." I was ready to say yes before he even mentioned the cost. I was so hungry for a solution that I stopped thinking critically. When he finally dropped the number, he did it smoothly. He said, "Normally, the legal retainer is $12,000, but because you are a senior citizen and a former educator, we can qualify you for a hardship discount. The total cost to wipe this debt from your record forever is $8,000. $8,000. I swallowed hard. I did not have $8,000. The savings were gone. The checking account was running on fumes. But David was pushing. He said, "Robert, think about the maintenance fees. You are paying $3,000 a year forever. $8,000 is a bargain to stop the bleeding. If you do not do this, you will pay that resort another $30,000 over the next decade. Do you want to pay them, or do you want to pay us to destroy the contract? The logic seemed flawless. It was the logic of desperation. I told him I needed to think about it. He said, I understand, Robert, but our intake window for this month closes at 5 o'clock today. If you do not secure your spot, you will have to wait until the next quarter, and by then, the resort might have already placed a lien on your home. That threat was the trigger. I could not risk the lien. I could not risk losing the house in Cleveland. I asked him if they took credit cards. He said, absolutely. I went upstairs to the bedroom. Linda was downstairs watching television. I walked quietly to the back of my sock drawer where I kept an emergency credit card. It was a Capital One card with a $10,000 limit that we had opened years ago strictly for medical emergencies. It was the nuclear option. I looked at the card. It felt heavy in my hand. I knew that the interest rate on this card was 24%. I knew that if I could not pay it off, the debt would explode. But I told myself that this was a medical emergency. The stress was killing me. This was a life-saving procedure. I went back downstairs to the study, closed the door, and read the numbers to David over the phone. He typed them in. He said, congratulations, Mr. Thompson. You are now on the path to freedom. You will receive your welcome packet in the mail within 7 days. Welcome to the family. I hung up the phone and I felt a wave of euphoria. I felt lighter. I walked into the living room and I almost told Linda. I almost said, honey, I fixed it. I paid a lawyer to make it go away. But something stopped me. A tiny voice in the back of my head told me to wait until the paperwork arrived. I did not want to get her hopes up until I held the cancellation letter in my hand. So I said nothing. I kept the secret. 7 days passed. The welcome packet did not arrive. I told myself it was just the mail being slow. 14 days passed. Still nothing. I called the number David had called me from. It rang and then went to a generic voicemail. I left a message. I said, David, this is Robert Thompson. I am just checking on the status of my file. Please call me back. I called again the next day, and the next. By the third week, the knot in my stomach was back tighter than ever. I started searching the company name online. I went to the Better Business Bureau website, and there it was, a giant red alert. Timeshare Freedom Group was listed as a pattern of complaints. There were hundreds of reviews from people just like me. People who had paid $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 and never heard from them again. The reviews used words like scam, ghosted, and theft. I read a comment from a woman in Texas who said, they took my money and disappeared. The office address is a UPS store in a strip mall. I felt the blood drain from my face. I sat there in the study, and my hand started to shake so violently that I knocked my coffee mug off the desk. It shattered on the floor, but I did not even look at it. I dialed the number one more time. This time, there was no voicemail. There was a recording. A robotic female voice said, "We are sorry, the number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again." The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, listening to the silence. I had just been robbed. I had not just lost the money. I had been targeted. The resort had sold my data. They knew I was desperate, and they sold my name to a boiler room operation that preyed on that desperation. I had taken an $8,000 cash advance on a high-interest credit card and handed it to a criminal. I was now $108,000 in the hole, plus interest. I felt a wave of self-loathing so powerful that I wanted to curl up on the floor and disappear. I was a principal. I was an educated man, and I had fallen for the oldest trick in the book because I was too weak to face the reality of my mistake. The next month was a blur of paranoia. I knew the credit card statement was coming. I knew that if Linda saw a charge for $8,000 to a company she had never heard of, she would have a heart attack. I started stalking the mailbox. Every day at 11 o'clock, I waited by the front window. As soon as I saw the mail carrier turn the corner, I ran outside. I pretended to be gardening. I pretended to be checking the weather. I intercepted the mail every single day for 3 months. When the Capital One envelope finally arrived, I snatched it before it even hit the box. I took it to the garage. I opened it. Minimum payment due, $250. I did not have $250. I had to take cash out of our grocery budget to pay the minimum. I hid the statement under the mattress in the guest room. I was living a double life. By day, I was the stoic husband trying to keep the house warm. By night, I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, calculating the compound interest. I looked at Linda across the dinner table, and I could not meet her eyes. She thought we were struggling, but she had no idea we were ruined. She thought we were fighting a battle together, but I had already surrendered our last line of defense. I felt like a traitor in my own home. That was the lowest I have ever felt. Not when I lost the savings, not when I cut the pills, but when I looked at my wife of 40 years and realized that I was lying to her every single time I opened my mouth. I was protecting her from the truth, but the truth was the only thing that could save us. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a house when the money finally runs out completely. It is not a peaceful silence. It is the silence of a held breath. It is the silence of waiting for the other shoe to drop. After the exit scam, after I realized that the $8,000 on the credit card was gone and that no lawyers were coming to save us, the financial dam finally broke. For 3 years, I had been juggling bills, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and moving balances between credit cards just to keep the lights on. But in January of this year, the juggling act ended. I looked at the bank account, and there was exactly $42.15 left. The pension check was not due for another 2 weeks. The heating bill was due. The grocery cupboard was empty. And on the counter sat the maintenance fee invoice for the timeshare, demanding $3,200. For the first time in my life, I did not try to pay it. I physically could not pay it. I had to choose between paying $1 billion developer in Florida or buying insulin for my wife. It was not a moral stand. It was not a protest. It was simple, brutal arithmetic. I took the invoice and I put it in the shredder. I watched the blades eat the paper. I felt a strange, terrifying sense of relief, followed immediately by a wave of nausea. I knew what I had just done. I had breached the contract. I had stopped feeding the beast, and I knew the beast would not like it. The phone calls started 5 days after the due date. At first, it was automated messages, a robotic voice reminding us of a past due balance. Then it became human collectors. They called at 8 in the morning. They called at 8 at night. They called during dinner. We stopped answering the landline. We unplugged the phone from the wall jack in the kitchen, but the silence of the phone was replaced by the noise of the mail slot. Every day, the letters got more aggressive. They changed from white envelopes to pink, then to red. They used bold, capitalized fonts. They used words like delinquency, default, and legal action. I hid most of them from Linda, but I could not hide the certified letter that arrived last Tuesday. The mail carrier knocked on the door and asked for a signature. Linda answered it. She saw the return address. She saw the legal heavy cardstock. She brought it into the kitchen, her hands trembling, and she laid it on the table. She did not open it. She just looked at me and said, "Robert, what is this?" I knew I could not lie anymore. The time for secrets was over. I opened the envelope, and I read the document aloud. It was a notice of intent to foreclose and seek a deficiency judgment. I need you to understand what that term means, Sam, because I did not understand it until I looked it up, and it terrified me more than anything else. I thought that if we stopped paying, the worst thing they could do was take the timeshare back. I thought, fine, take it. We do not want it. Take the week, take the points, take the platinum status. Just leave us alone. But that is not how these contracts work. The letter explained that they intend to auction off our timeshare to recover the debt. But here is the catch. They control the auction. They will likely sell it for pennies on the dollar, maybe even to a subsidiary of their own company. Let us say they sell it for $1,000. But the contract says we owe them the full value of the mortgage plus all future maintenance fees, which they calculate to be over $40,000. The difference between what we owe and what they sell it for is the deficiency. And the letter stated in clear legal language that they intend to sue us for that difference. They are not just taking the vacation home back. They are coming for the cash. And since we do not have cash, they are threatening to place a lien on our personal assets. I looked at Linda and I saw the color drain from her face. She looked around our kitchen. She looked at the peeling wallpaper and the old stove. She looked at the window that looks out onto the street where we raised our children. This house in Cleveland is not a mansion. It is a modest 3-bedroom ranch that we bought in 1982. But it is paid for. It is the only thing we own in this world that is truly ours. It is our sanctuary. It is the only reason we are not sleeping under a bridge. And now, a corporation in Florida was threatening to attach a legal claim to it. They were threatening to turn our home into collateral for a debt on a hotel room we cannot use. Linda grabbed my arm, and her grip was surprisingly strong. She said, "Robert, they cannot take our house, can they? They cannot put us on the street because of a vacation club?" I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to tell her that there are laws against this. I wanted to be the strong husband who says, "Over my dead body," but I could not say it because I had read the fine print and I knew that we had signed a confession of judgment clause. I knew that we were legally exposed. The fear we are feeling right now is not the fear of being poor. We are already poor. We have accepted that we will never eat steak again. We have accepted that we will never buy new clothes. This is the fear of annihilation. We are 68 and 66 years old. We are physically tired. We have chronic health conditions. We are unemployable in the modern economy. If they sue us, if they garnish our pension, or if they force a sale of our home to satisfy a judgment, we have nowhere to go. We cannot start over. There is no time left to rebuild. We would be those elderly people you see pushing carts down the side of the highway. That image haunts me every time I close my eyes. I see Linda sleeping in a shelter, clutching her purse, and I know that it would be my fault. I spent 40 years building a fortress of security for her, and I dismantled it brick by brick in search of a fantasy. So, this is why we are writing to you, Sam. We are at the end of the road. The collection agency is calling 5 times a day. The legal threats are escalating. The exit scam company has vanished with our last $8,000. We are bleeding out. We cannot sell the timeshare because it has negative value. We cannot give it away because nobody will take the maintenance fees. We cannot pay the fees because we need to eat. And we cannot just walk away because they are threatening to follow us to our doorstep in Ohio and take the roof over our heads. We are trapped in a box that is getting smaller every single day. We need to know if there is a way to break the lock. Is there a legal mechanism, a loophole, a strategy that we do not know about? How do we legally kill a contract that is designed to outlive us? How do we stop a zombie debt from eating the only life we have left? Sam, please tell us there is a way out. Please tell us that we do not have to die to get free of this.
Robert, I need you to take a deep breath. I need you to stop looking at the collection letters, stop looking at the glossy brochure of the villa, and look at me. Or rather, listen to my voice as if I am sitting right there at that kitchen table with you. For the last hour, you have told me a story of a slow-motion car crash. You have described how you were seduced, how you were manipulated, and how you were bled dry. You are currently in a state of paralysis because you are terrified of the unknown. You are terrified of the words foreclosure and lien. You are terrified of the judgment of your peers. But right now, your fear is the wrong tool for the job. Your fear is telling you to hide, but your survival instinct needs to tell you to fight. I am going to give you a plan, but I need to warn you that this plan is going to hurt your pride. It is going to feel like a defeat, but it is not a defeat. It is an amputation. You have a gangrenous limb attached to your financial body, and it is poisoning your blood. We are not trying to save the limb anymore. We are trying to save the patient. We are trying to save you. So, I want you to listen to these 3 steps, and I want you to write them down, not on a scrap of paper that you will throw away, but in a notebook that will become your battle plan. Step 1 is the hardest psychological shift you will ever have to make. You must mourn the money. You are holding on to this timeshare because you feel that if you let it go, you have wasted $100,000. You are telling yourselves that if you just pay a little more, or if you just find the right buyer, you can get your investment back. I need to look you in the eye and tell you the brutal truth. That money is gone. It was gone the moment you signed the contract in that windowless room. It did not buy you an asset. It bought you an experience that is now over. You have to treat that $100,000 like it was a house that burned down without insurance. It is ash. You cannot rebuild it from ash. As long as you are trying to save the investment, you are vulnerable to scams. You paid that exit company $8,000 because you were trying to save the sunk cost. You have to let it go. You have to say the words out loud, "We lost the money," say it to each other, cry about it, scream about it, grieve it like a death in the family. But once you accept that the money is never coming back, you strip the developer of their power over you. They can no longer use your hope against you because you have no hope left to exploit. You only have reality. And the reality is that you are free from the delusion of value. Step 2 is about the mechanics of survival. You are terrified of foreclosure. You are terrified that it will ruin your credit score. Robert, you are 68 years old. Linda, you are 66. I want you to ask yourselves a very serious question. What do you need a pristine credit score for? Are you planning to buy a new mansion in the next 5 years? Are you planning to finance a fleet of luxury cars? No. You are retired. You own your home. You own your car. The credit score is a tool for borrowing money. And borrowing money is exactly what got you into this mess. You do not need a credit score right now. You need cash flow. You need to eat. You need to pay for your insulin. You need to turn the heat back on in your house. So, here's my advice. Let the timeshare go into foreclosure. Stop paying the maintenance fees immediately. Do not send them another penny. Let them send the letters. Let them ring the phone. Let them mark your credit report with a big red X. Who cares? A ruined credit score is better than a ruined life. A credit score of 500 is better than freezing to death in your own living room. You have to prioritize your biological survival over your financial reputation. The moment you stop paying them, you give yourself an immediate raise of $3,000 a year. That is money for food. That is money for heat. That is money for dignity. Step 3 deals with a specific threat to your home in Ohio. You mentioned the deficiency judgment and the threat of a lien. This is a real legal maneuver, but it is also a scare tactic designed to make you pay out of fear. They want you to think that they can just come and take your house tomorrow. They cannot. There is a legal process, and you have rights. You need to consult with a local bankruptcy attorney in Cleveland immediately. Do not use an internet company. Find a real person in your town. You do not necessarily have to file for bankruptcy, but you need to understand the homestead exemption laws in Ohio. In many states, your primary residence is protected from creditors up to a certain amount of equity. A lawyer can show you how to ring-fence your home so that even if the timeshare developer sues you and wins, they cannot touch the roof over your head. This is called asset protection. It is what wealthy people do every day. You need to stop acting like a victim and start acting like a defendant. The law is a shield, but you have to pick it up. If you are truly insolvent, if you have zero assets other than your home and your pension, you might be what looks like judgment proof. This means that even if they sue you, they cannot collect because you have nothing to take that isn't protected by federal law. Pensions are usually protected. Social Security is protected. You are safer than you think you are, but you need a professional to build that wall around you. I know this feels shameful. I know you are worried about what your friends at the country club will think if they find out you defaulted. But let me tell you something about those friends. If they are true friends, they will not care about your credit score. And if they judge you for falling victim to a billion-dollar predatory industry, then they were never your friends to begin with. You have to shrink your world down to what matters. What matters is the woman sitting across from you, Robert. What matters is the man sitting across from you, Linda. You have been fighting each other because you are stressed. You have been keeping secrets from each other because you are ashamed. That stops today. The enemy is not in the kitchen. The enemy is in Florida. I want you to look at each other right now. I want you to look past the wrinkles and the worry lines. I want you to remember the couple that burned the mortgage papers in the fireplace 30 years ago. That couple is still there. You are still those people. You just took a wrong turn. You can turn the car around. It is going to be bumpy. There will be phone calls from collectors. There will be nasty letters. But you will be warm. You will be fed. And you will be together. Robert, I have one question for you, and it is the most important question of this entire interview. I want you to look at Linda, really look at her, and I want you to tell her that the money is gone. Can you do that? Can you look her in the eye and say, Linda, I lost the money, but I refuse to lose you, because that is the only legacy that matters right now.
Sam, when you asked me to look at Linda and tell her the money is gone, I felt something physically break inside my chest. It was not a pain. Exactly. It was more like a dam bursting. For 3 years, I have been holding my breath. I have been holding this posture of the strong provider, the man who always has a plan, the man who never fails. I have been so terrified that if I admitted defeat, I would crumble into dust. But looking at her right now, sitting across from me in this cold kitchen, wrapped in a blanket that is too thin for this weather, I realize that I have not been protecting her. I have been protecting myself. I have been protecting a version of Robert Thompson that does not exist anymore. You were right about the legacy. I told myself, and I told her, that we bought the timeshare for the grandchildren. I said we did it so they would have memories of swimming in the ocean. But that was a lie. That was a beautiful, noble lie that I used to cover up the ugly truth. The truth is that I bought it for me. I bought it because when I retired, I felt small. I felt invisible. I went from being the man everyone respected, the man who ran the school, to being just another old man in line at the post office. I hated that feeling. I hated the irrelevance. When we walked into that sales center in Florida, they made me feel important again. They called me Mr. Thompson. They asked for my opinion. They treated me like a high roller. When I flashed that platinum card, I got a rush of dopamine because it told the world that I was still somebody. I was still a player. I was willing to bankrupt my actual life just to keep that feeling of importance alive for 1 week a year. I sacrificed my wife's comfort on the altar of my own vanity. That is a hard thing to admit, Sam. It is the hardest thing I have ever had to say. But saying it out loud, right now, I feel lighter. I feel like the heavy coat I have been wearing has just dropped to the floor. You told me to mourn the money like a death. I am doing that right now. I am closing my eyes and I am visualizing that $100,000. I am seeing the years of early mornings, the missed holidays, the overtime shifts that went into saving that money, and I am watching it burn. I am imagining it turning into ash and floating away on the wind. It makes me sick to my stomach, but you are right. It is gone. No lawyer is going to bring it back. No resale market is going to return it to me. It is ash. And if it is ash, then I do not have to guard it anymore. I do not have to starve myself to protect a pile of ash. I do not have to deny my wife her medicine to ensure a pile of ash. The realization is washing over me like cold water. I am free. I am poor. Yes. I am bruised. Yes. But I am free from the obligation to pretend. I do not have to pretend to be a wealthy traveler anymore. I can just be Robert, the retired principal who lives in Ohio and loves his wife, and that has to be enough. It is enough. And regarding the credit score, I am laughing, Sam. I am actually laughing a little bit, which sounds insane given the circumstances, but the absurdity of it just hit me. I have been freezing in my own home to protect a 3-digit number in a computer database. I have been terrified that if I default, a stranger at a bank might think less of me. But why? I am 68 years old. I'm not buying a new house. I am not starting a business. I do not need their approval. Let them trash my credit. Let it go to 0. Let them put a big red stamp on my file that says failure. I do not care. I cannot eat a credit score. A credit score does not keep Linda warm. If the price of my freedom is a bad reputation with a bank I will never use again, then that is a price I am happy to pay. I am done playing their game. I am done following rules that were written to exploit me. They can have the credit score. I will keep my life. I am looking at Linda now. Her hands are resting on the table, and they are shaking a little from the cold. I am reaching out and taking her hands in mine. They are ice cold. That ends now. I am standing up from this table. I am walking into the hallway. I am standing in front of the thermostat. For 3 years, this dial has been a symbol of my failure. Every time I looked at it, I felt fear. I felt that every degree of heat was $1 I was stealing from the debt. But today, it is just a thermostat. It is a machine that serves me. I am turning the dial. I am turning it past 62, past 65. I am turning it all the way up to 72 degrees. I can hear the furnace kicking on in the basement. It is a low rumble, like a sleeping giant waking up. I can feel the air starting to move through the vents. It sounds like the most beautiful music I have ever heard. I am walking back to the kitchen. I am going to make Linda a cup of hot tea, and we are going to sit here and get warm. We are going to let the phone ring. We are going to let the letters pile up. We are going to call that bankruptcy lawyer tomorrow morning and build that wall around our house. But tonight, we are just going to be warm. I am done pretending, Sam. I lost the money. I lost the legacy, but I did not lose her. And as long as I have her, and as long as this furnace is running, I am a rich man.
That sound you just imagined, the low rumble of a furnace kicking on in a freezing house in Cleveland, is the most important sound effect we have ever described on this show. It is not just the sound of natural gas burning to create heat. It is the sound of a man reclaiming his dignity. It is the sound of a couple deciding that their biological survival is more important than their financial reputation. Robert and Linda are going to be okay. They are going to face a barrage of phone calls. They are going to receive letters written in scary red fonts. They are going to see their credit score drop by 200 points. But they are going to be warm. They are going to have food in their refrigerator. And most importantly, they are going to stop bleeding. They have applied a tourniquet to a wound that has been open for 3 years. But while we celebrate their breakthrough, we cannot ignore the wreckage that remains. We have to look at the debris field of this financial crash and ask ourselves how it happened. We have to extract the black box recorder and analyze the data so that you, the listener, do not end up in that same windowless room, signing away your future for a glass of cheap champagne. The first lesson from Robert's story is a fundamental truth about money that the marketing industry tries desperately to hide from you. A vacation is a consumption event, not an investment asset. I want you to write that down. I want you to tattoo it on your brain. A vacation is a memory. It is a fleeting moment in time where you experience joy, relaxation, and connection. It is beautiful, and it is necessary for the human soul. But you cannot finance a memory. If you have to borrow money to create a memory, you cannot afford it. If you have to sign a 30-year contract to guarantee a week of happiness, you are not buying happiness, you are buying anxiety. Robert and Linda tried to purchase a feeling. They wanted to feel successful. They wanted to feel like benevolent patriarchs. They bought a product that promised to deliver that feeling forever. But the math of the universe does not work that way. True wealth is not defined by the name on the deed of a condo in Boca Raton. True wealth is defined by your cash flow. It is defined by your ability to sleep at night without staring at the ceiling. It is defined by your ability to turn up the thermostat when it is cold. By chasing the illusion of wealth, they destroyed their actual wealth. They traded a paid-off life for a financed fantasy. We also need to talk about the terrifying legal construct known as the perpetuity clause. This is the weapon that makes the timeshare industry so uniquely dangerous. When you sign a car lease, you know that in 36 months, you can hand the keys back and walk away. When you sign a mortgage, you know that in 30 years, the house is yours and the payments stop. But a deeded timeshare contract is often written to last forever. It is a zombie debt. It is designed to outlive you. It is designed to follow you to the grave and then reach out of the grave to grab your children. I have seen cases where estates were held open for years because the developer refused to release the heirs from the maintenance fees. This is not property ownership. Ownership implies control. If you cannot sell it, if you cannot give it away, and if you cannot repaint the walls, you do not own it. You are a tenant with a mortgage. You are a renter who is responsible for the roof. It is the worst of all possible worlds. You take all the risk of a landlord with none of the equity, and you have all the costs of a tenant with none of the flexibility. If you are ever sitting across from a charming salesperson who tells you that this is a real estate investment that you can pass down to your children, I want you to stand up and walk out. Do not be polite. do not wait for the gift card. Just leave. Because the legacy they are selling you is actually a curse. Robert's story also highlights the secondary predator market. This is the part that truly makes my blood boil. The timeshare exit industry is a cesspool of fraud. They know that millions of people are desperate to get out of these contracts. They scrape public records to find the names of owners who are in distress. Then they call you, posing as your savior. They use words like consumer protection and legal advocacy. They validate your anger. They tell you exactly what you want to hear, and then they ask for an upfront fee. In the financial world, an upfront fee for a service that has not been performed is almost always a red flag. Legitimate lawyers usually work on a retainer or a contingency basis, but they do not cold call you and demand $8,000 on a credit card to file a form. If you are trapped in a timeshare, never pay an upfront fee to a company that called you. If you need legal help, find a local bankruptcy attorney in your own zip code. Go to their office. Look them in the eye. Verify their license. Do not trust a voice on the phone who promises to make your problems disappear for a wire transfer. There is no magic eraser for legal contracts. There is only the hard work of negotiation or the nuclear option of default. Finally, I want to address the free breakfast or the free weekend. This is the bait. Every single person who ends up $100,000 in debt started with a coupon for a free meal or a discounted stay. The industry knows that if they can just get you into the building, if they can just get you into that chair, they have a statistically significant chance of breaking you. They have refined their pitch over decades. They know how to manipulate your fatigue. They know how to manipulate your ego. They know how to pit a husband against a wife. The only way to win that game is not to play. If you see a booth at a state fair, or a kiosk in a hotel lobby, or a friendly person on the boardwalk offering you free tickets to Disney World if you just attend a 90-minute presentation, keep walking. Run. That free breakfast is the most expensive meal you will ever eat. It could cost you your retirement. It could cost you your marriage. It could cost you your peace of mind. We are building a community of people who are waking up from these financial nightmares. If you are listening to this and you feel a knot in your stomach because you recognize yourself in Robert's story, I want you to know that there is no shame in seeking help. The shame belongs to the predators, not the prey. We have created a specific resource for this episode. It is a do not sign checklist that you can download and keep on your phone. It lists the red flags of predatory contracts and the specific questions you should ask if you ever find yourself in a high-pressure sales environment. You can find that checklist on our Discord server. The link is in the show notes. Join the community. Share your story. You will find thousands of people there who have walked in your shoes and found a way out. And if you have a friend or a parent who is planning a trip to Florida or Las Vegas or Mexico, please, I beg you, send them this episode. Forward it to them right now. Tell them to listen to Robert's voice. Tell them to listen to the fear in his voice when he talks about the cold. You might just save them a lifetime of regret. Robert and Linda are turning the heat back on tonight. They are going to sit in a warm kitchen and drink tea. They are poorer than they were yesterday, but they are freer. And freedom, my friends, is the only asset that truly matters. I am Sam, and this has been another episode of the show. Stay safe, stay skeptical, and keep your wallet in your pocket. Good night.